We're going to dive into the Bellator 272 Pettis vs. Horiguchi betting preview presented to you by MyFitFoods of Denver. Eat fit, live fit, give a fit. Go to www.myfitfoods.com. Use the promo code Peanut Gallery in the checkout and get yourself some savings on the back end. Clay, this main event, this has excitement written all over it for this matchup here in Bellator. We have Sergio Pettis, the current champion, who's going to be taking on Kyoji Horiguchi in a Bantamweight title fight. You know, this is just one that you see a guy who is presumably still on the rise and still coming into his own in Sergio Pettis, going up against a guy who is been at the top of the mountain, didn't get to the top, but it was right there teetering on that UFC title greatness, but is also a champion in multiple other organizations and former champions as well in Horiguchi. You know, what are your thoughts on this matchup here?
I love this fight. It's exciting. You know, I was telling you off air that I've trained with Sergio a couple times when he came down to Jackson Wink, and even at that point, I was so impressed with his skill set. You know, I think that when guys suffer these losses sometimes on their rise, we start to think that they aren't maybe what they actually are. And I think now you're seeing him actually come into his own and showcase the skills that he's always had. And so I'm excited to see him get there. Horiguchi is a fun fighter, and it's tough when you get a guy that's only kind of fighting over in Japan and you're not 100% sure about the competition that he's facing. But like we were saying to each other, by all accounts, he's the real deal, and he might be the best bantamweight in the world.
Very, very, very well could be as far as being that guy. Saturday night is an opportunity for him to kind of put himself back into that conversation there. But just like you mentioned with a guy like Sergio Pettis, sometimes with him being the younger brother, he gets overlooked and kind of stays in the shadow of his brother Showtime Anthony Pettis, who was the former UFC champion. But let's just take a minute to show some respect to Sergio's resume over the past couple of years since 2017. Now, between the UFC and Bellator, he's fought names like Brandon Moreno, current UFC champion, Henry Cejudo, former two-division UFC champion, Joseph Benavidez, multiple-time UFC title contender, future UFC Hall of Famer. You have Rob Font, who we've talked about in the previous segment as being in a potential number one contenders matchup in the UFC. You had Ricky Bandejas, who at that point was white hot in the Bellator ranks, and then he beat Juan Archuleta for the Bellator title. So that's a pretty solid resume over the course of the last 3.5, 4 years right there. But then on the flip side, you have the 31-year-old Horiguchi, who by numbers' sake is still within that prime championship window. He is a guy who, according to the general consensus of people interviewed and asked, and this was even a part of a Mark Ramundi article that was put out on ESPN today, that he's the consensus best skill for skill guy at American Top Team, which, as big of a team with as many champions as that gym has, I think that really kind of says something. You mentioned how he was a guy who is a quality veteran who has seen some of the tops of the tops. In the UFC, his only loss was to Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson in a title fight. And that just so happened to be a fight that went all the way to the 4-minute and 59-second mark of the fifth round, which he ended up getting armbarred in that final second to be the latest stoppage in UFC title fight history, and at the time was the latest fight stoppage in history. Obviously, that was tied by Yair and the Korean Zombie a couple of years ago here in Denver. But right now, just to put it on paper for what it is, Horiguchi is the current champ over in Ryzen. He was the champion in Bellator, but he had to have knee surgery, which put him out for a prolonged period of time, vacated that title. He never lost this Bellator title that he's going to be challenging and contesting for this weekend. So, you know, I think that maybe to him that's a little bit of a mental edge. Like, he's like, hey, I never lost this title. I'm just going and taking back what's mine. Would you say that that's maybe a fair thought from the psyche standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even the Mighty Mouse fight, you can kind of chalk it up as, I feel like Horiguchi got that fight a little bit too soon. You know, that division wasn't the deepest at the time, and he kind of got thrust in there. I think if you would have seen that fight 2 years after, 3 years after, it could have been a different fight. So I expect him to be very dialed in for this matchup.
That being said, who do you have?
I'm going to go with Sergio. I believe that he's going to stay technical, and I believe he's going to get it done. I know Horiguchi's good, but like I said, I think when you look at the resumes and the guys that Sergio has been fighting and beating, I think that like he's fought in the better competition, and Horiguchi coming over to the U.S. It's just a different thing for him. So it's close though. It's very close.
That's fair. That's fair, and there's not a single thing that you said that was wrong, but I'm going to pick against you, and I'm going to go with Horiguchi in this one. I just think that he's been there. He's been through the bright lights a time or two, and he's had a lot of big fights throughout the course of his career. Whether or not that ends up playing a factor that benefits him this weekend or not, who knows? That's why they got to make the walk. But for those reasons, that's why I'm going to go with the slightly more experienced veteran on that side in Horiguchi. Now, in the co-main event, we have one of my favorite fighters on the Bellator roster, and I can't really tell you why. I just like watching Emmanuel El Matador Sanchez fight. Like to me, he's an exciting dude to watch. He's out there. He's fighting Jeremy Kennedy. This is a featherweight matchup. Sanchez, though, right now, he's in desperate need to get a win. He's coming off of 2 losses, albeit one of those was a title fight to Pitbull. But, I'm excited just to watch this matchup in general because of the way that guy always brings the fight.
Yeah, I mean, Emmanuel Sanchez wins fights with pace, and he's going to push the pace, and he's going to work hard. And, Jeremy Kennedy's a UFC vet, and he's got a great record. It's going to be an interesting fight. I think, Sanchez is one of Bellator's mainstays, so I think he's definitely trying to get back to that title fight.
Yeah, I definitely think that he's one that wants to get that turnaround, and with there being some new blood at the helm as far as that championship reign, because he fought Pitbull for the title twice, correct? I know he fought Pitbull and lost twice, but I couldn't remember if Pitbull was the champion the first time.
Yeah, he fought for the twice. The first fight was very competitive, actually, a very close fight, and then unfortunately the second one for him, he was beaten very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So that he needed to have the title change hands for him to be able to put himself back into a contender's point, because when you have 2 losses to the sitting champion, the odds of you getting a third fight are slim to none, with none probably being the heavy favorite in that race.
Yeah, absolutely. And even his most recent loss to Mads Burnell, I think Mads Burnell is a guy that had no business being cut from the UFC when he was, and is a very, very skilled fighter. So I think that Sanchez is fighting high-level guys, even if you don't know their names right off the bat.
Who do you take in this fight?
I'm going to take Sanchez by decision. I think looking at his resume, he's not really a great finisher, but he pushes a heavy pace, and like I said, Kennedy's an experienced guy with a great record, but I think that Sanchez will do enough to get a decision.
I like that pick. I lean, as far as my safe bet for that fight, if you will, to the over. There's always a chance that somebody who, just as you mentioned, with Jeremy being a tough dude who has some pop and has the ability to make some things happen on his side of things, I don't know if he has the ability to put a guy like Sanchez out. Also, at that, just depending on how the exchanges may go, I think that it will go deep into the fight. I don't know who at the end of the day, but I do believe that the over is going to be the safest bet that you can make. That's just me personally, folks. Now, as far as a feature matchup for this card, for me personally, I'm just going to put the spotlight on John DeJesus and Kai Kamaka III. This is a featherweight matchup that I think for this Bellator card has the potential for a fight of the night. You have 2 guys who love to strike, who can go out there and fight at a high pace, tough, durable dudes who are going to meet in the middle. Yeah,
absolutely. John's been training with us here at Factory X for the last couple of weeks, and he's fast, he's explosive, he likes to strike. And one thing that I noticed with John is he's got a little bit of an attitude when he's fighting. He's his bravado is very high, so I think you're going to, usually what happens when that happens is one guy's going to get aggressive because he's annoyed at the guy's demeanor.
Certainly. And in terms of, if we're looking at the scale between the 2 of the guys, I believe that the speed and the striking advantage goes to John, whereas you're going to see a bit of a grappling or a wrestling advantage, if you will, going toward the former college wrestler in Kamaka. But I don't think, just based off of the 2 styles of these guys, that there's going to be a whole lot of grappling that goes on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if John's able to get out to a lead or something, you might see Kamaka make some adjustments, but I hope that they meet in exchange, just because I'm hoping John does well and wins the fight. So
Certainly, 100%. Nothing but the best of luck to you there, John. Now, who do you have the spotlight on?
For this card, there's not like really, the Bellator cards are kind of smaller at the top, so I really just kind of want to see. When you look at the prelims, they're always kind of just local guys and stuff. So for me, I'm just looking at the two main fights at the top for like elite level, and then just kind of watching that card and saying who maybe has next. What's a prospect that we can kind of come up, and I think that's the best way to view some of these Bellator undercards is just kind of looking to spot these guys who are fighting some regional level guys and see who you think might do well in the future.
Is there anybody that may be sticking out to you, or someone that was like, well, maybe this guy has a little bit of buzz that I may think that it could be the guy, or just trying to get a gauge off of that from this card?
Yeah, just trying to get a gauge. Like I said, when you kind of look at these fights, they're very top heavy, and you just kind of, I think when you look at this undercard, the best way to approach it is to say, whose skill set do I like here, and then go from there.
Always a great opportunity to get attached to some potential future stars within the sport. When you watch the prelims, folks, watch the prelims. I'm always a strong advocate of that. People then talk about how when we have some of these quote-unquote lighter cards, well, if you would have been watching some of these other cards or watching through those, well, if you watch the prelims today, those are the stars for tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think part of Bellator's issue is, when they're behind a paywall on Showtime, so, you get the prelims free on YouTube, so you're able to catch some of those lower-level guys, and hopefully they'll turn into something big.
Certainly. What do you guys think of these picks? What do you think of this Bellator card? Let us know on the Go Fast Energy Drink hotline and text line at 303-831-1340. Stick around after the break. We are going to be going through the weekend rundown in the combat sports world. I'm Jordan Kurtz, sitting here alongside Clay Matza. This is the MMA Plug, presented to you by DenverSportsBetting.com on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio.
I threw my hands in the sky, about to get closer to God. Smoking this out while I drive. I threw my hands in the sky, bound to get closer to God.